Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa mursaleen Sayyidina wa Habibina al-Mustafa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. So we'd like to welcome you all to week 16 in this book of Aqidatul Awwam, or the Aqidah of the Common Folk, which is by Imam al-Marzuki. And this week, inshallah, we'll be covering the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how's everyone doing? Health, wealth, knowledge of self.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, everybody had a great week.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, good to hear. Okay, mashallah. So we covered last week from lines, we left off at line 40, I believe it was. Was it line 40?
I thought we did line 40, 41 too, because we have notes on Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum as well. Radiallahu anha.
Okay, no, we stopped at line 40, but I'm going to explain the 41st line. That's where we're going to start at. There's really not much of a discussion on there, but okay. So we talked about the Prophet ﷺ, his children. How many children did he have?
7.
Okay. How many boys and girls?
3 boys, 4 girls.
Okay, good, mashallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. Do we need to review any of that, or?
I'm okay. Can't speak for anyone else.
All right. So last week the focus was on the Prophet's family, but particularly what is considered Ahlul Bayt, and Ahlul Bayt are the descendants of who?
Husan and Hussein, radiallahu anhu.
Hassan and Hussein.
Hassan and Hussein. Hassan.
And so a quick trivia point. We mentioned that one of the popular speakers that we know today as Dr. Omar Suleiman, he is allegedly a descendant of someone from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Do you all remember who? If you take it too long, that means you're looking at your notes.
I ain't write that down.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
Okay. So remember, well, you might not remember, but we mentioned Fatima Az-Zuhra. She was the focus of last week, Ahlul Bayt, and she had 2 sons from Ali, Hassan and Hussein. All right, but she also had other children. You all remember those names?
The daughters, well, she had 3 boys and she had 3 girls, so they had 6 children.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? She named her daughters after her sisters, Zainab, Ruqayya, and Kulthum.
Yes.
And then her son, we named the 2. I remember the other one. It starts with the M.
Yeah.
I can look at my notes and see, but
yes,
I just know it starts with the M.
Yeah, his name was Mahassan. He died early. Okay, and so out of the 3 daughters that Fatima Az-Zuhra had, one of them was named Zainab. And so Zainab is one of the people who is considered to have offspring that are also descendants of Ahlul Bayt. That's not really mentioned, and Dr. Omar Suleiman is believed to be a descendant from them, and Allah knows best. Okay. Yeah, so it's a very interesting discussion. I think this week is going to be even more interesting when we talk about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. And so we'll begin. Let me get my screen ready. All right. Any questions? Did we have any homework assignments? I think we had something I wrote down. I can't find it right now, but I know I wrote something down. And I know y'all know I wrote something down.
No, we had no homework last week.
The the lies you tell.
She had actually answered it in the inbox, and
Okay.
you said it was right, but I
Okay.
can't recall.
Okay.
The surah, you asked about the surah that was revealed regarding the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his son. So we did our homework. We ain't got no homework.
Yeah. What was an actual surah? It was a hadith. Which son was it?
Abdullah.
You sure?
Yeah, because it was Qasim and then Abdullah. Because you asked about the surah that's revealed after the death of Abdullah. It said Surah Al Qathar was revealed
Oh, okay.
after.
Yeah. That's one thing. Yeah. All right. Right.
But you were
Uh,
talking about Ibrahim, the hadith
well.
about the solar
Yeah.
eclipse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. You on it? All right. All right. Let me share my screen. So we mentioned that Surah Al-Kawthar, it was revealed about the Quraysh, where the Prophet Islam, his second son, passed away, uh, whose name was Abdullah. And they were saying, after Qasim passed away, they were saying like, he don't have no lineage, So that was like a bad, uh, you know, like if you didn't have children, that was like frowned upon, So, and that was revealed about them making that they was the one that was going to be cut off. And then about the solar eclipse that took place when his son Ibrahim died, and the companions they thought it was like connected to his death, like something miraculous or a special. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, that no, the eclipse doesn't happen at the birth or death of anyone. It is one of the wonders of Allah. Okay. All right. Any questions? Okay. So as soon as I get the screen right, we'll start. Okay. All right. Let me do slideshow from current slide. Okay. All right, so now we're at line 41. Okay, wait a minute. This is going back. All right. So line 41. So he continues when he mentioned the prophet's children. And so, wait a minute. Yeah. So now he's mentioning, wait, we're left at line 40. So here we mentioned two daughters. I'm sorry. فَزَيْنَبٌ وَبَعْدَهَا رُقَيَّةٌ وَأُمُّ الْكُلْثُمْ رَقَتْ رَضِيَّةٌ. And so the other daughters are Zainab, and after her Ruqayya and Al-Kumtum, the pure and the worthy. All right. And so remember last week that the author, he mentioned them in order, but then he went back as a poetry. So the focus was on the Fatima and Ahlul Bayt and the other children, but then he mentioned them here. And so that was all it is. So remember, this is a poem form. So putting this together with rhythm and prose, and it also, not only rhyming, but also has a meaning to it. So just you have to keep that in mind with the author. So the way he flipped it, these would be equivalent to his bars. At our time we talking about bars, the way he flipped it. And so in that line, it wasn't really too much. Stop sharing. Okay, go back to that. So there wasn't really much to explain in that line because we already kind of discussed it, right, last week. So we mentioned the four daughters and the three sons. All right, so now we'll go to the next line. And so line number 42 is tis'i niswatin wafahul Mustafa خيرنا فَاخْتَرْنَا النَّبِيَّ الْمُنْتَفَى. And so the chosen one, who the Prophet ﷺ, one of his name is Al-Mustafa, and not Mustafa, you know. In our Ebonics, we call it Mustafa. So chosen one passed away, and he was survived by 9 blessed wives, and they were given the choice. They all chose to remain with the final prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so now we start the discussion. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here when he says about a choice, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had 9 wives when he passed, but he had married 11 in total. He had 11 in total, and they were given a choice to stay with the prophet. So does anybody know what this is referring to, a choice to stay with the prophet?
Is this meaning to be his wife and Jenna?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so we'll go into it. So here in the Quran, what Allah says in Surah Ahzab, ayahs 27 and 28, he said, O prophet, say to your wives, if you should desire the worldly life and its adornment, then come, I will provide for you and give you a gracious release. But if you should desire Allah and his messenger and the home of the hereafter, then indeed Allah has prepared for the doers of good among you a great reward. And so that's Surah 33, ayah 27. And so there is a backstory to this ayat being revealed to them. Anybody know the backstory? This ayat be revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I said revealed to them. Revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anybody want to take a stab at it? Nobody?
Sorry, I can't talk and write at the same time.
Okay. Don't worry about it. We'll explain. I just want to see where everybody's head is, if somebody's familiar with it already.
I got
So
a question though.
go ahead.
Okay, it says he married 11 in total. That includes Mother Khadija radiallahu anha as well, the
Yeah,
11, or this is just the 11 after her?
so no, it's 11 in total. So here in the poem, he's talking about the 9 that were still alive after he passed. So this is what he's talking. So we're gonna discuss that.
So they must have felt like they must have had this conversation prior to him passing, or something must have happened, right? To even have this conversation come about.
Yeah, we're going to discuss it. Yeah. So
I just want to let you know I'm engaged and I'm here.
Okay, cool. And that's a plus. All right. Yeah. Can I go to the next slide, or you, Sister Zakaria? Can I go to the next slide?
I'm still writing, but go ahead. I'll just take a screenshot.
You sure?
Yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
All right. So they were given a choice in this ayat. There's the backstory to this ayat being revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right. And so here, before we get to that, the 2 that were not mentioned. So it said 9 wives in the poem, but there were 11 total. So the first one is our mother Khadija, as we all know, radiallahu anha, the first wife of the Prophet. And so she was married twice before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she had other children. I believe, I can't remember the number. I think it was like 4 children before she married the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so there were different views about her age, and the most accepted view is that he was 25 and she was 40. And there's another minority view that she was 28 and he was 25. And so there have been arguments I've heard that people was like that the age of 28 was kind of closer, given the time that how many children she had and how many times she'd been married and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of jewels in this. The Prophet ﷺ married an older woman who had children, and he at that time was a virgin. He at that time was a virgin. So, and of course, as a virgin, he was like the pick of the litter, but he was chosen by Khadija. He was chosen by her. So she the one that sought him out for marriage. So all the types of jewels that we get from that, that It's not dislike for a woman to seek a man in marriage. A woman to have a status. One of the things that we're seeing nowadays is about what people bring to the table in these arguments. And so this is why it's important to choose someone who has deen, because if they have deen, then they're going to have some integrity. They're going to have some honor and some other things. Okay, you had a question, Sister
I
Candace?
really like that story. I kind of just had like a comment, maybe a question, but I really like that story about how Khadijah, peace be upon her, went about that, approaching Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Like she didn't just go up to him. Like she made sure that she told somebody, she was interested, and then that person sought out, in a wise way, to see if he was even interested. So I really like that story. And I also, transparently speaking, can see how though being, in the Islamic community and not in Mecca, it can be challenging when it comes to choosing, or finding somebody on a deen. So I think that's like a topic that we might want to explore more, because especially for like our younger sisters, when it comes to choosing somebody on a deen, I mean, transparently speaking, a lot of men, and a lot of people just fall short from that in general. So it's like finding that common balance,
Absolutely. And so also before she asked for his hand in marriage, the Prophet Islam used to work for her. So
Right.
he was employed by her. So there's a lot of jewels with that. And so this is something, you hear about what people bring to the table, and then all of the kind of things that people are looking for, what they're expecting in a marriage. And sometimes they're overlooking certain things. If, people are good, they come from good families, they have honor, they have integrity, they're truthful and all that. And of course, we living in times, we're far removed from the time of these kind of people, and, may Allah help us. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's arguments about the age of Khadijah. And then there was Zainab bint Khuzaimah. And so she was the other wife of the Prophet ﷺ who passed before him. And she was the sister of Maymuna. And Maymuna was one of the wives we want to discuss today. And the Prophet ﷺ, that was her sister. And the Prophet ﷺ married Maymuna later. And so, of course, we know there's an ayah in the Quran that it is not permissible to marry two sisters at the same time. But if one passes away in Islamic tradition, you can marry the sister, and I think it's also connected to if they had children or not, if I'm not mistaken. And so he married her, and she was married. It was a very short marriage. She was married to the Prophet ﷺ for approximately 3 months. And so she was known as Masakin, the mother of the poor, because she used to always give whatever she had away to the less fortunate, like she was always engaged in feeding the homeless and, taking care of their needs. So these are the two that's not mentioned in the poem when he mentioned that there were 9 wives. All right. So Khadijah and Zainab bint Khuzaimah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he married her before they made the Hijrah. Lord knows better. I had to check that out again. All right, can I go to the next slide?
You could go ahead. I screenshotted it.
Okay. And so now the incident about the verse we just talked about with the Prophet ﷺ, about giving his wives a choice. So there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari that's narrated by Ibn Abbas. He said that one morning we saw the wives of the Prophet ﷺ weeping, and every one of them had her family with her. And I went to the mosque and found that it was crowded with people. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab came and went up to the Prophet ﷺ, who was in his upper room. He greeted him, but nobody answered. He greeted again, then nobody answered. Then the gatekeeper called him, and he entered upon the Prophet ﷺ. He said, have you divorced your wives? The Prophet ﷺ said, no, but I have taken an oath to not go to them for 1 month. And so the Prophet ﷺ stayed away from his wives for 29 days. And then after that, he came out into them. So there are a number of things here. So for instance, why did Umar go to him? Anybody know? Somebody clicked off. Okay. Why did Umar go to the Prophet ﷺ? What was it? What business of it was his?
One of his daughters was married to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yes. You know which one?
Hafsa.
Yeah, Hafsa. Okay, we're going to discuss Hafsa. So the incident occurred. So one of the narrations says that the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, that he used to give them maintenance for up to a year, right? So he would provide for them in their living quarters and whatever they needed for up to a year. And so, of course, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ weren't like lavishly living, but they weren't starving either. And so they said as the community started to grow and they started to getting more war booty from fighting disbelievers and taking them captive, and as the finances started to grow, then they the wives start thinking like basically we need to upgrade. You know what I'm saying? So that was one of the arguments that that they were kind of like for lack of a better way to saying it, they were getting on his nerves. I hope I said that in the best light. But they, the Prophet ﷺ, of course, was extremely patient. But you can imagine dealing with nine wives and 9 personalities. And so the Prophet ﷺ, basically he took a vow to stay away from them for a month. And so there was another narration. It's connected to this.
Question: was this after the incident? I thought this happened after the incident with Aisha right? It was an incident with her saying something.
Yeah, I think this is connected to the same incident, or it might be after.
Okay.
Into it. Yeah, but I was going to say that some of the reports say that this was where I think it was Hafsa or Aisha. No, Aisha related some news to Hafsa, and it's a secret that the Prophet ﷺ disclosed to her, and she went and said something about it, and I think it kind of I can't remember the exact narration, but that was one of the narrations. But then also at this hadith, this is also the time when Umar came in on him and asked him, they said that this is when he was sleeping on the mat, like a mat that left marks on his body, and then they asked him, why are you doing this? Like, why are you, you don't have to, you still the Prophet ﷺ, even though you took this vow, you don't have to be like sleeping on, like basically on the floor, And he said, what have I to do with this world? And so, and then another narration was interesting is that after he made the vow for a month, which a month in Islam is 29 or 30 days. And so there's a report where when he first came out of taking this, so it was like an i'tikaf, like he was in seclusion. And so when he came out, the first one he went to was Aisha radiallahu anha, and then she asked him like, basically, I thought you said it was going to be a month. And then he said a month is 29 or 30 days. So there's a little subtlety there, like, even though he took the vow to stay away from them for a month, he missed his wife. So as the first moment that he could come, he wanted to go see his wives, And so he's like, a month is 29 or 30 days. So I want to come out as soon as possible, but at the same time, stand firm and holding his word, So those are like those little subtleties, those jewels, that you can dig deeper into. But this was the incident that was behind the revelation of Prophet ﷺ. And so all of the wives, they chose, Allah and His Messenger in the hereafter. And so when you discover their lives, how much barakah they gave after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So remember, these are the 9 wives that were still alive, at the time of his passing. So sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. And so there's another narration that, you see here that they were around, like, what's going on, And so it was Abu Bakr and Umar, they were, like, concerned, Okay, and then they all had their representatives, like, we got to really, like, they coming like, look, what's up, ultimatums, what you gonna do, So, all right, can I go to the next slide?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is the incident. Okay. So then the next slide is line 43. So now there's a discussion about the 9 wives. And so here we start. Aishatun wa Hafsatun wa Sauda, Safiyatun, Maimunatun wa Ramla. And so he starts with the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. So we already discussed the 2 that passed before him, and now the 9 that that were alive at his passing. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Aisha, Hafsa, and Sauda, Safiya, Maimuna, and Ramla. Okay, so let's go into those discussions. So the first one he mentions, these are his wives, and they are our mothers. When they became the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they became Mu'mineen, the wives of the mothers of the believers, the mothers of the believers. And so we start with Aisha, who was the daughter of Abu Bakr. And so she married the Prophet ﷺ around the age of 7 in Mecca. And then she moved into the Prophet ﷺ about 8 months after the Hijrah. So about maybe 2 or 3 years after the Hijrah, of the Hijrah. And so she was approximately 9 years old. And so there's of course, there's a big critique from non-Muslims about the age of Aisha. And then there's a big discussion amongst Muslims about her actual age. And so, one of the things that we ever encounter these people, because this may seem like a stain, on Islamic tradition, but that people, because I would have believed, you heard people say some derogatory things about the Prophet ﷺ. And one time about masjid, that someone sent us a very derogatory picture that was supposed to be the Prophet ﷺ, and so some of the things they say that I'm not going to repeat here, but when they talk about people who are, who are afflicted with like being pedophiles and stuff like that, that they only go after young girls, right? They only go after young girls. Like, a grown woman wouldn't do anything for them, And so this is the only one that the Prophet ﷺ married that was a virgin, and that was that young. So in the culture, it wasn't really anything, because as we mentioned last week, there were a couple of Sahabas that married. I think it was one of the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ. I think it was Ruqayya, that got married, like 8 or 9. And then, but then it wasn't consummated until a few years later. I think it was Ruqayya that we discussed last week. May Allah be pleased with her. And a couple other people that they married young, but there was a tradition that you would marry and then not even consummate, until, they hit puberty, or if they already hit puberty, still wait for a time till everything to get settled. So this was not something strange. And so with respect to the Prophet ﷺ, first of all, we don't, entertain people who are ignorant and only know about Western values, which by the way, if you look at some of the history of, the age in this country, there were laws on the books that you can get married as early as 14, in some states. And, check the state that you're in, and you might see the laws. You'd be like, man, that this was something that was not uncommon. That somebody else came and put ages on all these things, that you got to be 18 before you're grown, or 21 before you can vote, and all of these things, where in Islam, a person is already mature, mukallaf, way before that. So this is not an argument that, you should let anybody draw you into. And, and most people, when they are the criticizers or the detractors, they're thinking from a hypersexual perspective, And this country and people in this country, have no moral right to even discuss anything, especially when they will turn their nose up at a man marrying a young girl, right? But they won't turn their nose up at two men making love to each other, two women making love to each other, people having what is it called, bestiality, you know, having intimacy with animals. And we're not even going to talk about some people who, you know, that this stuff about with minors and even like toddlers, that is part of their religious doctrine, like part of their religious doctrine. So I don't want to get off into that because it sometimes it pisses you off when you hear some of the things people say. All right. And so Aisha, she that was her age. So she was the most knowledgeable of all the wives of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And she was the one, you all know the story when when the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talked about Khadija. You know, she said that she was not any other wives of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam except Khadija, but she had never met Khadija. And then there was one narration was like it's like she called her an old toothless woman. Like what, you know, what was so special? So, you know, Aisha was young and maybe, you know, probably, you know, not using the best manners when it comes to those things. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, that she believed in me when nobody else did, you know. And so Aisha was so knowledgeable in Islam that they say that approximately 25% of the Islamic law is related from her, you know, with respect to hadiths. So there was over, I think her narration is over 2,000 hadith, and then all of the issues of fiqh, you know. And so she died in the year in the year 58 after Hijrah, which was in the year 678. So what year did the Prophet ﷺ pass away? What year?
Was it 73?
The
He was
Hijra
born
year.
in 50.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, work it out in your mind. Do that Shanae.
Was it 650?
No, the Hijra year.
Oh man.
Okay, so the
Can I
Hijra year
use
is,
my calculator?
no, you can do it easy. So how many years did the Prophet was he in Mecca?
I think it was 13, right?
Yes, and how many years was he in Medina?
10. Was it 10?
So the calculation is from the time they made Hijrah, that's when the calendar starts. So from the time he made from Mecca to Medina, if he was in Medina for 10 years, what year did he die at Hijri?
The 10th or the 11th?
Yeah, some say 10 for 11. So when we talk about converting the calendars, they might be, you know, a few days off, you know. So if he died in the year 10 Hijri and she died in the year 58 Hijri, so of course we know that she never had children. So that was another almost 50 years of her serving the Ummah. Another 50 years. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, when they chose Allah and his messenger and they didn't choose the dunya, they still were beneficial in the dunya because of their service. It's remarkable, you know. So they made the right choice, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed them in their lives and in the benefit that we got from their lives that they made the right choice. Okay, so the next wife is Hafsa. And so Hafsa was the oldest daughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And so she was around 20 when she married the Prophet ﷺ, and then she passed in the year 45 AH, around the age of 60. And so anybody know any quick thing about Hafsa?
She was one of the ones that held the Quran, kept the preservation of the Quran.
Okay, that was one thing. Yeah, I believe so. But Hafsa, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, You know that what's the name? Proposed to her. No, I'm sorry, Umar ibn al-Khattab, because she was married before, and then when her husband passed, when her iddah was complete, he was trying to get her married again, and so he asked Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr said no, and Uthman, he asked Uthman, he said no, and I'm not sure if he asked Ali or not, but he asked Uthman, they both said no, so he was like, what's like, what's up, man? Nobody want my daughter, man? Like, what's going on? Like, and he's just close friends, so they married together, like kept it close, and so he was like, why my homies don't want, man, I'm offering my daughter up, man. And so one of the narrations is that that they had knew that the Prophet ﷺ was interested in marrying her, and so to cement the ties between him and Umar, and so that's why they declined. That's one of the stories. And then there are other things you read about Hafsa. So I don't want to.
The one that talked about the divorce with her too. She was kind of feisty, like Umar. Had that feistiness, and so he was thinking about like divorcing her because of something she said or something like that, or she had to change, be less feisty. Is she the one too?
Yeah, the Hafsa. They said she was, lack of a better word, she was like, she was a firecracker. For lack of a better word. So so they asked for a hand in marriage and they declined. So Umar was thinking like, what's going on? All right. And so she passed around the age of 60, and she was married to the Prophet ﷺ 3 years after the Hijrah when she was about 20. So another 40 years of her, so another example of a good choice. Right. And of course, none of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ married after him. That was part of the choice. That if they chose the hereafter, they couldn't marry after him. Right. And so that's another plus there. Okay. And so the next wife is Sauda. And so she was married to her cousin, and they had made.
It's gonna be long.
Hello?
I gotta use the bed. Sorry.
Yeah, you gotta put your mic on mute.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay, so Sauda was married to the Prophet ﷺ, and they had made hijrah, her and her husband, to Abyssinia, and so she was married for a long time, and I think she had about 6 children. And so her husband, when he would return to Mecca, he passed away. The Prophet ﷺ then married her in Mecca after Khadijah passed, and so she was around 50 or 51 years old. And so she passed away at the end of the Khalifa of Umar ibn al-Khattab, so the year 54 after Hijrah. And so she lived to be pretty old. All right. She lived for a while. So the first 3, Aisha, Hafsa, and Sauda.
Question.
Yeah.
So he married Sauda before he married Maria.
Yes.
Mariah, Ibrahim's mother.
Yeah. Maria. She was at the end.
Maria.
Remember, so Ibrahim died I think it was the 8th or the 9th year of the Hijri, the 8th year. And so that was near the end.
So Sauda was the first wife that he married after Khadijah radiallahu anha.
Yeah, so he married her in Mecca. So this is before the Hijrah. So the only ones he had married before the Hijrah was Khadijah and Zainab, and they both passed away. And also Aisha. So before the Hijrah, he said he married her, and then after the Hijrah, 8 months after the Hijrah, and that's when he consummated with her. And so in between there, he married Sauda. So she was technically the first wife after Khadijah. And so here again, he married an elder woman that was his peer basically, and she had many children. So when we hear brothers scoffing at women who have multiple children, they should think about the sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu. Okay. Can I go on?
1 second, 1 second.
It take you that long to do a screenshot? Just joking.
Stop bothering me. I'm done now.
You ready?
Yeah.
Good. All right. To the next slide. So here we continue with the wives. So the next wife is Safiya bint Huyay, and her father was a descendant of Harun. So she was one of the wives that was of Jewish descent, or children of Israel. Her father was a descendant of Harun from his mother's side, and so she was married before the Prophet ﷺ, and she was taken captive. So her husband was killed in the battle they had with the Muslims, and she was taken captive. And so she was around 17 years old when the Prophet ﷺ married her in the 7th year of the Hijrah. And so one of the stories is that, he married her to restore her honor because she came from an honorable family, and that it was reported that some of the other wives used to tease her because she was Jewish. And so you can imagine it was, for lack of a better term, the what's that term? The usual suspects. So Aisha mainly, may Allah be pleased with her, And so then she used to say that, and I think it was either she said or the Prophet ﷺ reminded her that you are your grandfather, basically, not her direct grandfather, was a prophet, and your uncle was a prophet, and you married to a prophet, So she had a distinguished honor. So the Prophet ﷺ honored her by freeing her as a captive and marrying her. And so she died in the year 54 after the Hijrah. And so if she was 17 in the 7th year of the Hijrah, so the 54 minus 7 is that was 30 something years. 33 years.
What battle did you say? I'm sorry. What battle was it?
I forget the name of the battle. I forget the name of the battle. That's something that sounds like a nice homework assignment.
You can't give us half notes. You just said she was taken captive in the battle. You supposed to put the battle on there.
No,
you got half notes on here.
No, it's not about the battle, it's about the wives. But since you mentioned battle, you know what I'm saying? This is just basic. Remember, this is Aqidatul.
No.
This is the common, what you need to know as a basic. Then you build on it, But if I'm not mistaken, it's the Banu Nadir tribe, I think they fought against. If I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. So she was about 20 years old, and so if she died, what's that? Another 30 years or so, 40. So she lived another 40 years after the Prophet ﷺ. And so that was another good sign that they had a lot to offer when they made that choice of, either, choosing the dunya, one to be lavishly living, or choosing Allah and His messenger. And so all this is manifested by the divine revelation. So the next wife is Maymuna bint al-Harith, and she is the sister of Zainab. She is the sister of Zainab that we mentioned, that this is the wife that the Prophet ﷺ had married in Mecca, and she died. He was only married to her for a few months. And so later on, he married Maymuna some way later on, so in the 7th year after the Hijrah, so it was some time that passed, right? And so it is reported about her that she was also the aunt of Ibn Abbas and Khalid ibn Walid. And she was the last wife of the Prophet ﷺ that he married, and she was the last one to die. She was the last one to die. And so she was in her late 30s when she married the Prophet ﷺ, and she passed away in the year 61 after the Hijrah. And so some 50 years later, she passed away.
and Khalid ibn Walid. That was the one that Umar took the commandership from, because that was the one that everybody was like, they was attributing the wins of the Muslim battles to him particularly and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's when Umar took gave it to I forgot his name. Oh, shoot, he was the 10 promised Jannah, the last one, Jafar ibn Jafar. Ubadullah ibn al-Jafar, I think that's how you say it.
Jarrah. Yeah.
Jarrah.
Jarrah, yes. Okay.
I need this Arabic class because I'll be chopping some names up here.
MashaAllah. Okay, but no, that's a good reminder though. Yeah, I remember hearing that story. There's a number of stories about Umar and Khalid ibn Walid, like being competitive. And I remember hearing one a long time ago that I think like Khalid ibn Walid was like that. I remember somebody telling me that he broke Umar's leg when they was younger. So, and you know, Khalid ibn
Wow, I
Walid.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I never verified or never heard it. I just remember hearing that story. So I don't know how true it is. But Khalid ibn Walid was one of the best, you know, military generals that the world has known. And I believe they said that he never lost a battle. And that's probably why Umar was like, I want people to be thinking that it's through him and not through Allah. So, there's probably some correlation there. Because, when we hear about the stories of the companions, we know that they're the best people and Allah is pleased with them, but they were people too, They weren't just regular people, but they had all the qualities of regular people. So they went through things. Don't think that, things happened between them where they had, what I mean, where we got reports already, they may have been jealous of each other or had some, things with each other. They might didn't like each other. And that's why the belief of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that we are pleased with all of them. We don't speak ill of any of them, even when we read about some things that will seemingly be like some type of conflict, And when you study the Sirah really, really deeply, you be like, yeah, these were like, I always call the Sahabas as extraordinary regular people. Like these were extraordinary.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes no mistakes. I think it's beautiful how he took human creation, showed the mistakes, and showed the beauty of faith and iman in our ancestors, in our ummah that we can look up to that came before us, the great Sahaba, women and male. You know what I mean? That's what it is. He took regular people like us and do regular things like us and say, hey, they made this mistake, so this is what happened. This is how you fix it. This is how you correct it. And so that's
because to take people who went from worshiping idols and gang wars and alcohol and all the stuff that they were doing and how the commitment that they had was just unparalleled. MashaAllah. Okay. So the next wife is Ramla ibn Bint, that's supposed to be Bint As-Sufyan, and her kunya was Habiba. And so she became Muslim in Mecca. She was one of the early Muslims, and she made hijrah to Abyssinia. And with her husband at that time, I forgot to put her husband's name, but she was married to her husband. And when they went to Abyssinia, as you all know, that was the first hijrah. The first hijrah is when the believers were being persecuted in Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ had heard about the king Najash or Najash, who was in Ethiopia. And so a group of companions went there, and some of them stayed there. So Habiba had stayed there for a while. But while she was there, her husband became Christian. He died there. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he asked Abu Sufyan, when he got the word, he asked for her hand in marriage. And her father agreed. So what's important about this part when Abu Sufyan agreed to marry his daughter to the Prophet ﷺ?
The connection, because wasn't Abu Sufyan, during this time, wasn't he on the side with the Quraysh that were trying to harm the Muslims?
Yeah, at this time.
Is that her father?
Yeah, at this time, Abu Sufyan, when he married his daughter to the Prophet ﷺ, he was still an enemy of the Prophet. but he knew the Prophet Islam's status. And when he went to Abyssinia, oh no, it wasn't Abyssinia. Well, he went between the Roman, I think it was the Roman king. Whenever that story about Abu Sufyan, and he was given a report, the truthful report about the Prophet Islam, and even though he didn't believe at that time, but of course he ended up accepting Islam at the conquest of Mecca. So all that time, so you never know how someone, when their time comes for them to come to the truth. So you just got to keep it open, And so he asked for her hand in marriage. She was married to the Prophet Islam. So 1 year after the Hijrah, and then they said she stayed in Abyssinia for about 6 years, and she came to Medina in the 7th year after Hijrah, and so she was in her mid-30s, and so she died in 45 AH, and so she died in her mid-60s. There's another story about Habiba. It was during the time, one time, she came to visit. So Abu Sufyan used to come visit her sometimes. And so when he came, and so all of these incidents are related. So when he came, and she had like a cloth that she used to sit out. And when her father came, her own father, now, during that time, they had, great respect for the father, right? And he would come and try to sit on like a carpet that she had. And so when he came, she folded it up. So he asked her a question. He said, "Oh, my daughter, either I'm too good for this carpet, or you think this carpet is too good for me. Either I'm not good enough for the carpet, or the carpet is not good enough for me." And so she told her own father, she said, "This is what the Prophet Salam says down there. You're not worthy of it." She told her father that, And so now just imagine
I
that.
remember that story.
Yeah, so just imagine in his mind, like, what kind of movement is this, man? My own daughter's not even giving me respect, and I married my daughter to this man. And so just imagine that stuff going in his mind. Like, this movement is transforming people's hearts, that they throwing off the yoke of all of the stuff that, came with them, even if it meant going against their families. That's how much they love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, And so that's very important. So she was married Najash, he actually performed the marriage. He read the khutbah for them to be married. And then, she met up with the Prophet Islam when she came to Medina. And then she died some years after that. She died in the year 45. So she lived another, 25 to 30 years after the death of the Prophet Islam. Okay, so we got Aisha, we got Hafsa, we got Sauda, we got Safiya bint Huyay, Maymuna bint al-Harith, and Ramla, who was also known as Habiba. All right, any questions on that?
No.
Okay, so I'll go to the next one. So then the author mentions in line 44, and so this will be the last line we cover today. And so then he mentions Hindun wa Zainabun kada Juwayriya lil mu'minina ummahatun murdiya. He says, in Hind, Zainab, and Juwayriya, they are all mothers of the believers, the blessed ladies. All right. Let's go to the next line. So we discuss these last three. And so here we have Hind bint Abu Umayyah, who was also known as Salama. And so she was around the age of 30 years when she married. And the Prophet she married the Prophet the 4th year after the Hijrah. And so she died in the year 64 AH, and she lived to be 80-something years of age. And so it was reported about Salama that she had a number of children with her first marriage, and the husband died in battle. And so she was one of the ones that said that, when she was married to Prophet Salam, she was like, she was letting him know that she let him know that she was like, had some jealousy. Like she put it out there up front, like I'm a little jealous, like I was married for my husband for a long time and he passed. And so the Prophet Salam reassured her. And there's a narration that her and her husband, before he died, that they had like made a pact that neither one of them were married after, you know, after they each, whichever one passed, the other one went to marry after they passed, you know. But of course, it's not something that someone should do. But it wouldn't be, as long as someone observed the limits of Islam. Like if you didn't get married after your spouse passed and your preference was just not to get married, that's fine and well. But you know, you should still try to get married, you know. And so these people had these kind of things, like, you know, like in our days, like be with me forever, you know, or something like that. So they loved each other. And so, but it was said that the Prophet, I mean, her husband had said that he had made dua that she would marry someone better than him. Like, so he wasn't tripping, like, you know, this is my woman, I love her, but I want her, how the song goes on, how one of them songs go, I want you to be happy even if you're not with me, you know, or something like that. So he made dua that she would have somebody better than him, and she ended up marrying the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You are. I don't want to sing the song because we recording, but you
I
are.
got to talk about Mace. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, look at him doing his Mace.
Tell me what you want from me. Yeah, that.
That's so amazing. So a lot of men, I like the way he handled that, because most men nowadays, you know, that jealousy is a turn off.
Yeah, they be possessive and you know that kind of stuff,
They
and you
don't
know
like
how
their
we.
women to be jealous, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like they expect,
yeah.
they don't like that.
And then, or you hear people now, like, you know, one of the plagues of our community is that a man will have children with a woman. He's not involved in the children's lives, and you know, don't have nobody around my kids, you know, and those things. But you had a question, sis
I
Zachariah.
was gonna say, I was gonna ask. Please don't make this homework. I just because we already studying the women, and I'm gonna learn about it in Imam Naeem's class probably tomorrow. I think she's coming up, if I'm not mistaken. But I thought Salima radiallahu anha, was she the one that also gave up one of her days to Aisha? I remember reading the story, and I think she was the one that, you know how they have their times, and she gave up her days or something, saying because she was older or something like that.
I think that
Do
was
you
Sauda.
remember?
I think that was Sauda because Sauda was the oldest one.
Sandra?
Yeah,
Okay, okay. I knew
if
it
I'm
was
not
one of those
mistaken.
mothers with the S.
Yeah. So they, you know, they were one of a kind women, you know. They weren't really tripping, you know, even though they had the, imagine being married to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like you want them exclusively, you know, and yet they still, you know, alhamdulillah, these are, you know, the mothers of the believers. Okay, so the next one is Zainab bin Jahsh. And so her mother is the Prophet's father, whose name is Abdullah. Her mother and the Prophet's father were brother and sister. And so she is the Prophet Islam, technically his first cousin. And so, you know, of course, back then, you know, we hear these things about, you know, marrying first cousins or kissing cousins, and you know, the whole myth that if you marry your cousin, that you know your kids will come out, you know, something wrong with them, you know. And so I don't know if there's any scientific thing to that, you know, but even so, it was not something that's forbidden in Islam, you know. And of course, I think later on, you know, I think it was done during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, and some of the scholars have said that, you know, marrying, uh, like continuing, because there's like the gene pool, the number of genes and stuff, like marrying inside your family doesn't allow for like too much growth. So he encouraged to like to marry like other, you know what I mean, like outside of your family. All right. And so Zainab, she was married to the Prophet Sallallahu adopted son Zayd, and so this is also, he wasn't his biological son, because then that would have not been lawful. And so she married the Prophet Sallallahu in the year, the 5th year of the Hijrah, around 35 years of age, and she was the first wife to die after him. And so Maymuna, as we mentioned, she was the last one married to him. Zainab was the first one to die after him. As all the other ones so far, they lived long lives, and so if she died about 10 years after the Prophet ﷺ passed, and she was around 53 years of age.
Question.
Yeah.
She was the one she was the first one to get a kula, right? In a sense, like, because she was like, she didn't feel that she was the one that mentioned about having fear of not being able to fulfill the rights of her husband. So she had fear of not being able to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why the divorce was permissible. Is this the story? If she's the one with that story?
No. This is that was the husband's name was Case, and I forget the woman's name. But she was the first one to ask for a khula, and one of the narrations, what was the reason? Because she felt like that she could no longer obey Allah or be dutiful to Allah being married to him. And another narration said that that because he wasn't attractive. But no, this is not the one. So this is the one where there seemed to be controversy because she was married to the Prophet's adopted son Zayd. And then the Prophet ﷺ married her after that. So there's a whole story about that we don't have time to cover today. But
Okay.
yeah. But no, I forget the name, but it's not Zainab.
Okay.
All right. And so the next one, and this is the last one, is Juwayriya bint al-Harith. So she was married to the Prophet ﷺ around 20 years of age in the 5th year of the Hijrah. And so she died in the year 56 after the Hijrah. And so one of the stories about her is that she was also from Jewish descent. And so it was said when she was captured, that she asked to be free before it was offered to her. So she kind of like knew her worth. So it was basically like, somebody gonna free me. I'm Juwariya, you know what I mean? So and then and so it got back to the Prophet ﷺ that she was offered to another companion. She declined. And so she just, during the time when they took captives, they would either like offer them freedom, or they had to do a service for the Muslims, or they had to pay the jizya, or it was a number of options. And so she asked to be freed. And so the way that she got free was to marry the Prophet ﷺ. And so this is another one, the Aisha. They said that she was very beautiful. And then it says a narration that when Aisha saw her, that she knew the Prophet ﷺ was going to marry her. But before that happened, it was already kind of like in the works to restore her honor, because she came from the Bani Israel. Right. But it was researching the story a little bit. She was like,
You said Ramallah, right? Her and Ramallah. Ramallah was of Jewish descent as well.
Yeah, no, Safiya.
Safiya.
Ramla
Okay.
is also known as Habiba. So she was the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Safiya ibn Huyay, she was the one that was also that her grandfather, her father on his mother's side was a descendant of Harun. So that was, she was from that lineage. But both of them were captives in war. And so it was, I think it was the story, if I'm not mistaken, Juwariya, that when the Prophet ﷺ married her, and I think because of the tribe that she came from, a lot of the people from her tribe were freed. And I think Aisha was saying like she never saw a woman that had so much like blessing like in one incident, because when the Prophet ﷺ married her, that I think other companions, the captives that they had, they started setting them free. I think that's one of the stories that I remember, and Allah knows best. Okay, so we got Aisha, we got Sauda, we got Aisha, we got Hafsa, we got Sauda, we got Safiya, we got Ramla, and we got who we missing? Safiya, Ramla, or Habiba. I'm missing one. Then we have
Salama.
Salama, Zainab, and Juwayriya. Oh, hold on, let me go back and see what I'm missing. I skip my mind that fast. Maymuna. Maimuna. Okay, mashallah. And so those are the 9 wives of the Prophet Sallallahu. So next week, inshallah, I ask you all to run the names off the 9 wives. And before we end the class for further reading, Sister Zachariah, you already mentioned it, but I want you all to check out Imam Naeem Abdullah, Master Muslim of Pittsburgh. He has a series called Wives of the Prophet that he does it live on Facebook. What day does he do? What day and time does he do it?
It's Monday through Wednesday. I think it's after Maghrib y'all time. So it's usually 4 o'clock my time. So it's about 7 o'clock y'all time.
Okay, yeah. So you can check Imam Naeem. He's doing a series on the Wives of the Prophet. And then you can go to his website, noticeamaninstitute.org, and he has a book that he's using called Wives of the Prophet. You try to purchase it, and you can go back and I'm not sure which one he's on, but he covered a number of them already. You can go back and he does them live on Facebook, and I think they have them on their YouTube channel as well. So so it's very important to get in some
We
details.
just finished Hafsa.
Huh?
We finished Hafsa. We done I think four already. 4 or 5 already.
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in that, you can go back. So there's four videos already. So he got to do at least 5 more. And so Imam Naeem is going into detail. And so his thing is history. One of his, we call him the genius, but one of his things is history. So it'd be very informative to check that out, inshallah. Okay, so we'll stop there. Any questions? Hello?
No questions.
Okay.
No question.
Okay. All right. So for next week, inshallah, I want you all to be able to run off the 9 wives of the Prophet. And also, well, no, we'll do the 9 wives, but go over the names of the children as well. All right, because as we
You just gotta know the names. We don't have to know the history, right?
No, you don't have to know the history, but once we, at the end we regroup, we're going to go over what you need to know for a test. So, and I'll tell you some of the things that we mentioned about them, like what was their kunya, and particularly the years that they passed away. But we're going to go over that before
you didn't mention the kunya. You didn't mention the kunya otherwise. You only mentioned the kunya of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Right.
Abu
Whoa, relax. I'm only going to give you what we mentioned. So if we mention Ramla, it's Habiba. Right? So
that's what that means, like the nickname. Okay, her other name known as. Okay, gotcha.
Relax,
like Salima. Yeah, I got you.
Relax. Yeah, so that and inshallah, but when we round up at the end, because we're going to be finished this course soon. We're line 44, so we got 13 more lines left, and they're going to go kind of not fast, but so when we come at the end, I'll go over all the stuff that you're going to need to know. And so at the end, what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to basically have a working knowledge of this book. And inshallah, because this is Aqidatul Awwam, this is Aqidah for the lay person. So these are things that the person who is of age, they have to know these things. You have to know the Prophet Prophet's family, his wives, his children, his uncles, and all of those kind of things. And you have to know them in detail, but just for the purpose of the class, you just need to know the names. All right. Okay. Any questions before we? Okay. Any questions before we finish?
No questions.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity to gather for knowledge. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it from us. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الفاتحة. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.